G'day y'all, it's The Edward Show. I'm your host, Edward Fox, and together we're going to dive into the lives and stories of extraordinary individuals I meet from every corner of our globe. G'day y'all, it's The Edward Show. See, I'm getting better at this because my daughter said, you just say it's The Edward Show, what's the point with g'day y'all if you're not going to say it? So I moved from the deep south up to the north to learn how to say g'day y'all. So yeah, that's all I got on that. But guys, this show is all about introducing you to people that I find interesting all around the world. And so I was at an event on Friday called Impact 23, I think it was called. Was
Impact
that right?
Effect 23.
Impact Effect 23. Jim Morris will kill me because I didn't say it right. But Brian was one of the speakers. And I'm like, Brian, here's me card, mate. Come on to G'day Y'all, it's The Edward Show. And he's like, what's all that? I said, I'll just go check it out. So Brian Galke is, did I get that right? Galke?
You did.
Okay.
Yes, you got it.
I practiced in my head a little bit. And Brian was really interesting. He was talking about how the way, you know what? I'm just going to let him explain it. We'll get into it. Me doing it wouldn't do it justice, and he would have to fix everything I said wrong. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited you're here. So you are based out of Dallas, Texas. Is that right?
Right. Yep.
Okay. And you were up last Friday. We did the show, which was, what was that? October 29th?
27th. So we did the VIP event. I met you at the VIP event on the 26th, right?
Yep.
And then 27th was the actual day of the event.
Right. And man, he is one of the speakers that captured my attention from the get-go. And that's not really easy because you're at a conference all day and you're hearing such great speakers, but soon it becomes like Snoopy, wah, 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 wah. Yeah. But he was one of the three that really impacted me. Now the others are going to reach out and go, was I one of the three?
That's right.
We'll see.
Yes, you were. And then you can just have all 8 speakers here.
So Brian, You've been doing this speaking, you've been teaching this. Tell us a little bit about what you do for somebody that's not familiar.
Sure. So I'll give you a little bit of background with it. In 2010, I met a guy who changed my life. And it was through fluke circumstance because I had a friend who came to town. She said, hey, let's go to dinner. And I show up to the restaurant, I order a drink, and she calls. She said, I'm not going to make it. And I was like, oh, here we go. And so she said, no, please, you need to come to the trade show I'm at, and you need to meet this guy. And I said, why do I need to meet this guy? She said, well, he reads faces. And I'm like, oh, yeah, let me rush over there for that one. And she was persistent, and I was being stubborn, but finally she got me over there. But I went over there with an agenda. I was going to blow holes in this guy because I'd never heard of this before. I've got, tens and dozens of body language books. I've got How to Win Friends and Influence People, all these networking books because I'm an introvert by nature, and I'd never heard of this. So I went over there, chip on my shoulder, to go blow holes in this guy. And I sat down with him and a bunch of people at dinner, and he dissected everyone to a T, including me. And I was instantly blown away. I'm like, whoa, wait, what is this? How does this work? And it's known as face reading, right? But it's based on something called physiognomy. And if you go and you Google it, there's information out there, but it's known as a pseudoscience because it's not 100%. So people assume, oh, it can't be real. Guess what? Body language is a pseudoscience also, because it's not A plus B equals C all the time. So for example, if I cross my arms, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, right? Because I can be cold, my back can hurt, you name it. So it's the same thing of when people assume because it wasn't taught in school, it can't be real. Well, here's a crazy fact for you. Physiognomy, which is the art of understanding people based on their facial features, was actually part of the academic system until Henry VIII said, I don't like the idea that beggars and thieves can use this against their fellow man, and he had it yanked out of the education system. But it's still taught to attorneys today. It's still taught to different law enforcement. And what it is there's 42 muscles in the face. The mind creates movement, movement creates muscle. And I still thought, well, I don't know, maybe it was, just one of those things that he got me. So I went and I studied with this guy all through 2011, bought his books, bought his flashcards, right? And I started using it, and it's what helped me go from being on the help desk to a regional vice president of sales, because once I learned to focus on other people, I learned to get out of my own way.
Wow. Yeah.
It was completely crazy because like a lot of people, I thought it can't be real because I've never heard of it. And this, the craziest things is I've learned more from what I didn't learn in school that's helped me get ahead in life. School is good. Don't get me wrong. I have a daughter. She's in school right now. She's learning a lot of good things. but some of the most amazing things I ever learned were outside of the classroom.
We
and
can
this
get
was
an
the number one.
education, right? We can get an education a lot of different places. I'm a ninth grade dropout. My wife's got 2 degrees. She's got a BS
Yeah.
and a BA. I say I've got a degree in BS, or people say that about me. Yeah.
Right.
So you're exactly right.
Yeah. And it changed everything for me, because the worst part about being an introvert is you're in the prison of your own mind in a public setting. You're overthinking every interaction. What do I say? What do I do? But if you've ever read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, what he found is the people who were able to survive the concentration camps were the ones who said, I want to see my wife again. I want to see my dog again. I want to see my daughter again. You name it. So when you learn to focus on other people, you get out of your own way. And the cool part about it is our faces tell other people how to talk to us, because our faces reveal, how do we take in information? How do we process information? Do you want me to ask you personal questions or not? All these things are based on what your face says about you. And people go, no, it can't be true. But go back and look at pictures of how you've changed over time. And that's because those muscles kept changing. So when our parents said, stop making that face or get stuck that way, there's some truth to it.
Right.
And so since 2011, I've been using this and testing it, and in front of thousands of people. So one of the things, normally you saw me only get to talk for 30 minutes, and that's because he wanted to provide as much impact with a variety of speakers. Normally I'm a minimum 60-minute talker. Okay. And what I do is I teach for 45, and then people come up and volunteer on stage. So you talk about putting it to practice in front of everyone. I just bring them up and say, this is what your face says. This is how I'd sell to you. This is how I'd build relationships with you. And people say, oh, is it manipulation? And my answer to that is, I used to be the horrible American tourist that when I traveled everywhere, I'd speak English. And if they didn't speak English, I'd speak English louder, like somehow that was going to help, right? But when I learned basic phrases everywhere I went, please, thank you, good morning, good evening, good night, when I tried to speak someone else's language, they tried to work with me as well. And that's exactly what this is it's just figuring out, I know what I want to say, but how can I help ensure that you understand what I'm trying to say?
What I said and what you heard, we've been married. Yes. I've been married 33 years to the most wonderful wife in the world. And the hard part about that was what I was saying and what she was hearing were 2 different things. And then you throw in that I'm from Australia, she's from America. And we never say, in America, you say all the time, I'm just kidding, right? Yes. I'm just kidding when I'm joking. Australians never say that. Like, if you think I was serious, then you've got a bigger problem, because I'm never serious. It's always a joke. I'm not looking to hurt your feelings. I'm looking to make you laugh. And so if you get offended by what I said, I'm never going to say, oh, I was just kidding. So we had 2 different gaps. We had the language barrier, man and woman, and we had the language barrier, Australian and American, right?
Well, a funny thing, people can relate to what you're saying, because when there was that period in life where people had to wear masks, that really hurt somebody who was sarcastic, because what do we do when we're making a joke or we're sarcastic? We smile. Yeah. And when they can't see our smile, they just think you're an a-hole.
Right. So, exactly. Exactly.
I struggled with that, because I like to joke and laugh, and it's never meant to hurt people's feelings. It's just like, if I think it's funny and I think it'll make you laugh, I'll say it.
Right. And I was going to jump in, because when you said physiognomy, I was just researching some dad jokes on soft drinks, because we have soft drinks, pop, and soda, depending on where you are in the country. In Dallas, it's pop, right?
No, everything's Coke. Doesn't matter what you're getting. Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, I want a Coke.
Right. So, what do soda researchers study at school? Physiology. So, yeah. So, but I didn't. I resisted the urge to jump in. You probably saw me wanting to jump in, but So okay. Like me, I got no eyebrows. How do we do this? Like, my eyebrows are blonde. I need to put on the I can do zoom eyebrows as in the brown, if you like.
Oh, I play with that sometimes. It's kind of fun. No, what you have is actually called chameleon eyebrows. So it works in your favor. So if somebody can't see your eyebrows from far away, and they have to get closer to try and subconsciously see what shape are they. So it's a consensus builder. That means you're very good in negotiations, things of that nature, because people think, oh, he's just like me, because I can't see a difference. And that's where we're wired very oddly. And it's a survival thing, is we automatically look for things in other people, in their faces, their body, their likes, who's like me, and what's the reason that we're different. And the reason for that is we worry that if there's something different, is that danger, right? But when you have those chameleon eyebrows that we can't see, we assume, you're just like me. And so it does help with negotiations, meeting people, things like that. Absolutely.
So when you're teaching people this, are you going in and talking to corporate sales teams and that sort of stuff, or you'd be talking to all sorts of different people that need to know how to read people, right?
Sure. It always starts with sales, because why? Sales teams have the budgets. But once they understand what's there, I just spoke 2 weeks ago today to all of the management for the Texas Department of Public Safety. Why? Because you have to figure out, how do I understand my employees better? So it starts out sales, then it goes to team building, team bonding, executive retreats, president's clubs. Why? Because it's just a skill to learn how to build rapport with people, and every department needs rapport.
So it would filter into leadership as well, leadership and management.
Yes. Because one, negotiations, right? The higher you go, the more negotiations you have to do with people. But also, if you're a manager or leader, it's how to make people feel seen and heard and not like a number. So if you look at, I think it was a year ago, the term became more popular, and that is the Great Resignation.
Right.
And if you look at why people were quitting, it was, number one, they didn't want to commute again. But then it's, I don't feel seen, I don't feel heard, I don't feel part of the company. And these are all ways. There's if you're familiar with, there's a guy named Brian Bogert. If you don't know who he is, I'll gladly introduce you. But Brian Bogert had some really bad traumatic events when he was young. So he studied emotions, psychology, all kinds of things since then. But he talks about there's 4 basic human needs: physical safety, emotional safety, people want to feel seen and heard, and people want to feel connected. Well, I can help you with 3 and 4. And if you learn this skill, that is, you can make people feel seen and heard. And the reason why I always teach eyebrows, and for anybody who doesn't know, the reason he asked about eyebrows first is that's what I talked about during my 30 minutes. But I do that because eyebrows lead to eye contact. So if you take people who aren't good and are afraid to look people in the eye, well, if you look down and away, people feel dismissive. But if you're looking here, you get credit for looking here.
Right. Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's like the thing we were always taught, right? If you're in a business setting, don't go eyes to mouth with a young lady, because it's more intimate, right?
Sensual, yes.
Yeah. And so go eyes to forehead or forehead, depending on which country you're from.
So if you want to keep it strictly business, you can do the triangle this way. So go eye, mouth, eye, mouth. You can keep rotating, but you're right. If you do the opposite, which is eyes, mouth, chin, lips, then it's seen to be sensual, or you want something other than business. You want the other kind of business from them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I wear a little name badge that I can flip straight to the picture of my wife and I and say, I'm married to the most wonderful wife in the world. We've been married for 33 years. Oh, hit the wrong button. There you go. And so, to let them know, hey, look, I'm not that person. You don't have to worry about me. Let's really get into it, which is talk about your business. So that's what I do with that. So yeah, learning those little body language cues that I read books back when I first started in sales, really does help. But like you said, just like the folding of the arms, it could be that you're just cold. I was freezing the other day in that venue. I'm like, I had to go out to the car and get a coat. Right.
Yes.
It was just cold. And my church is like that too. Like I get freezing at the church. So, by the way, this is the most wonderful wife in the world, and that's trademarked.
There you go.
3 years. This top photo here, Brian.
Yeah.
He was taking the bottom photo, and when he went to change lenses, she started blowing in the ear. And that's how we got this photo. I'm like, hey, quit that. And she thought it was hilarious, which it was, but
candid photos are the best.
Yeah, they really are.
I had, since we were talking about websites and everything earlier, I have this natural knack for catching good candid photos, right, at weddings and events and everything. So I bought open bar wedding photography because I was married at the time. And I thought, I'll just go get invited to these weddings and take candid pictures and give me a backstory of how we know the bride and the groom. And I'll send you just random pictures from it, because everybody sees the photographer and what do they do? But they don't see somebody walking around with an iPhone.
Right.
And so that was one of the websites, since we were talking about it earlier, that I own, is open bar wedding photography. Hey, if it's an open bar and you pay my travel expenses to get there, I'll just walk around and snap hundreds of pictures for you.
There you go. So one of the ladies at the event was a friend of mine, and she is an iPhone photographer. And she goes
Really?
around the country speaking on how you can take great photos. And she did a photo shoot for me. She's done photo shoots for a lot of my friends, a lot less expensive, like a couple of $100. She'll give you 10 good photos that you can use for headshots and different things, compared to some of these high-end headshot people. And she's just really good at what she does. So, there you go. Exactly. She could do that as well.
I just went to a wedding, and this one was on purpose, not through the website, but my friends got married in Mexico, and I just created a shared album for them. I took 448 photos while I was there because I just like it. Especially, I always sit at a wedding on the aisle so I can get people coming in and leaving and everything else. But before I forget, sorry. We were talking about body language and watching your own. So this was one of the other speakers who talked about, Janine Driver. Her book, You Say More Than You Think, is a great book because this is a book on, she gives you exercises to video and record your own body language and learn from it. And so this was before Janine and I started working together. I actually had that book, and for a short period of time, we moved to Arizona for 90 days when my wife was on a project, and I'm going through Barnes and Noble, just geeking out like I normally do. And I saw this body language book and I picked it up, and I got home and realized I'd read the same book twice because I bought one on the road and I had one here. But that's a great one. And another really good one is, if you want to understand other people's body language, is What Every Body Is Saying by Joe Navarro.
Okay, I'm writing these down.
Yeah. So Janine was an ATF agent who had to go in and deal with gun runners and everything else, and she wasn't allowed to carry a gun. So imagine how important that body language was. And then Joe Navarro was a former FBI agent who would do investigations and interrogations on people, and he talked about body language as well. So I think those two books combined are an absolute powerhouse. So that's what
I see you've got Never Split the Difference back there.
Oh, yeah.
FBI negotiator, right?
Yep. Chris Voss.
Yeah.
I'm actually speaking at an event in January, and he's one of the other speakers. And I told the organizer, I'm like, I have to meet this guy because I've tried so many ways to get to him, because what we do is kind of similar. And I almost bought in. I don't know if you saw the emails a few months ago. He's doing another book, but he's inviting guest authors to be in it also.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And but I didn't know, to be associated with Chris would be absolutely phenomenal. But because it wasn't something he was promoting, it was third party, I was kind of like, let me meet him first. And then if he does another book, I'll jump in on that one.
Right.
Yeah, he's speaking at an event January 25th through 27th. And that was my one request as one of the other speakers are like, get me with Chris, because I did crash his event when he was in Dallas about 7 or 8 years ago.
Right.
I was a corporate employee at the time, but I saw an email that came out and said, oh, he's going to be in Dallas, and my company wouldn't pay for me to go to it or take the day off. So what I did is I found out where it was, what hotel it was, and I went and sat and it was actually at a private club. So I had to talk my way in. And then when they went on break, I snuck in, got a picture of him holding his book, and then I snuck back out. So
nice.
Yeah.
We call that creative hanging around.
Exactly, right? You got to engineer sometimes the things you want to have happen in life.
Right, exactly. We had a speaker at an event. We had a Tennessee Christian Chamber of Commerce that I'm on the board for, and we had a lunch yesterday. And the guy that bought the rights to Lost in Space was the speaker. And the name escapes me right this second. I could look it up. But he talked about how he got on the lot to go talk to the guys that could green light it or not, and talk his way in, because he had the same last name as like the head of the studio, and he just said he was one of their kids. Oh, don't tell my dad I'm here. Here's my driver's license, and he had the same last name, and the guy's kids lived in Florida, and he was living in Florida, and so he talked his way in. He had talked to the lady who had the rights to Lost in Space, and so he bought them and became a big shot because he talked his way into the. It's a great story, so it was fun. And now he's born again Christian, and he's got a book called The First Hour, I think, like what we as men should do as Christians to make sure that we're helping others. And it's really a good book. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
First Hour?
Yeah, I think it's The First Hour. I left two of them. I got three. I left two in the car, and I got one beside the bed, but I don't have
That's right. You can email it to me later.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, do that. I will do that. Okay, so what are some takeaways as we, we've got a bit of time left, but what are some takeaways from what you do? I loved your flashcards. I don't know if they're not going to show really well on Zoom, does that sort of thing, but, so talk a little bit about how you use those.
Sure. So I mentioned before, not everybody's going to have the ability. Well, actually, my mentor retired after COVID. He was up there in age. Before that, his backstory was he was an attorney who learned this for jury consulting. So physiognomy is taught to authors, artists, and attorneys. And the reason it was taught to authors and artists was because back when books were were written before, you couldn't put pictures of the characters. The only two ways to describe the characters in the book were through their actions and through their facial features. So that's why the authors would take it to figure out who to talk about their downturned nose and their pointed chin or their strong jaw and their strong chin. So every book we've ever read taught us about faces. And we actually talk about faces all the time because we say things like, take one on the chin, keep a stiff upper lip, keep your nose to the grindstone. I've got an eye for this. I got an ear for this. So kind of, as I mentioned the other day, now everywhere you go, you're going to hear how often we talk about facial features. Right. And we actually talk about when we say, this facial feature means something, we're getting trained. So we talked at the presentation about highbrow humor and lowbrow humor. So highbrow humor is when somebody tells you a joke and you got to think for a minute and then you laugh. Lowbrow humor is where you laugh immediately. Well, the reason it's termed after that is because people with high eyebrows, meaning more than a finger above the eye, need time to process decisions. If somebody's eyebrows are right on top of their eye, they make decisions instantly. So if you're going into a presentation, same calendar schedule. So let's say you got 30 minutes. Well, with the person with the high eyebrow, you're probably going to need about 20 minutes of talking to them before they'll make a decision. The person whose eyebrows down here, if you don't get to the point in 5 minutes and let them ask questions, you're going to lose them. So Jim and I were talking about the person I used in the presentation is one of my mentors, Brad Lee. If you got 30 minutes of Brad's time, but you don't get to your point in 5 minutes, you've lost out. Right. And so you start to use these things. And what I say is with the face comes grace, so that when you walk in, you figure out, OK, I still know what my message is, but how do I talk to them in a way that'll keep them engaged and entertained in the conversation? How do I build rapport? Well, I look at their face and go, OK, high eyebrows, I'm going to need to talk and give them time to think. Low eyebrows, get there as soon as possible. And then there's the different eyebrows and everything. So in addition to, and I kind of got ADD there for a minute, I would drive twice a month from Dallas to Fort Worth, Texas, which is about a 45-minute drive to do great group training with my mentor. And so that's great. And he has a book, but I don't mention the book because the book doesn't have highlights or arrows to point at the features, and it overwhelms everyone. But what he did come up with after the fact are the flashcards. And like I said, they won't necessarily show up great, but you can see they have arrows in it. And what it'll say is on one side, it is, okay, well, what is the feature? And then you flip it over and it's like, what's the meaning? And if you think about when we were growing up and we were going to school, I had a math book, but the way I studied for a quiz was flashcards. Right. This is no different. The book on some pages, and I've had this discussion with them. So when there's 8 features between 2 pages, it's like overload. Like, what do I do? But the way I learn things is step by step. And so what I would do is I would take a few flashcards with me on the road. And let's say I go to Starbucks in the morning. Well, I'd take out straight eyebrows and I would look for how many people that come in have straight eyebrows. And when I saw it on somebody, I'd go, okay, now what does that mean? And I'd flip the card over. Or if they have rounded eyebrows or if they have angled eyebrows. And then I would test it. And then that was step 1, was recognize the feature. But then I would take it another step. And that is I'd take the cards with me and I'd lay them out when I ate dinner at the bar or when my server's there, I'd lay them out on the table. Why? Because I go, oh, what's that? And I go, oh, you know what? I took this class. This is what they taught me. Can I ask you what, this is what your face says, but I'm trying to get feedback. And that's the way I really learned to trust it was, look, anybody can peddle you anything, but until you go out and test it, you don't know if it's legit. So for 11 years, I've been sitting at bars, airport lounges, whatever. I'll leave some of the cards out and then people come over and talk. And naturally they want to have their face analyzed. And I would get feedback.
Read my face, read my face.
Yeah, they would go, wait, can you read my face? And one of those slides you saw in the beginning was how to get free food and drinks, how to get upgrades in hotels, and how to get upgrades on planes.
Right.
I've used this skill for all 3 of those, and it happens all the time. The free food and drinks the easiest because servers want to learn it so that they're learning a skill to make more money in tips.
Right.
So you start with your server, then they bring over somebody else. Next, they're bringing over the bartender, then they're bringing over the manager, and then they go, hey, is there anything we can get you while you're doing this? You're like, it's a matter of fact, you can. And that's where the free food and drink comes in. But so I would take these flashcards and I'd learn it. And I used to be a bartender. And so as a bartender, you learn basic things like vodka Kahlua is a Black Russian, vodka Kahlua cream, White Russian, vodka Kahlua cream Coke, Colorado Bulldog. Well, it's the same way with faces, or because I've got a kid, we teach letters first. So that'd be like the facial features. Then we teach words, right? And that is, okay, what are the different facial features? Then we teach sentences. Then we teach paragraphs, right? Then pages. That's how analyzing faces works too. I always start with something I can see from far away, which is eyebrows. But then I teach, learn from top to bottom, left to right. And the main ones I like to teach people, eyebrows, because again, it leads to eye contact. But then upper lip. So we say the phrase, keep a stiff upper lip. So if somebody has a thinner upper lip, they don't like being asked a lot of personal questions until they get to know someone. And people go, oh no, it's genetics. It is 60% genetics, but the moment you're born, your outside environment starts impacting you down to a DNA level. And so if you're in somewhere that you can't talk, what do? You go, well, as you do that over time, and Janine actually talked about that, right? The lip press. As you keep doing that, your lips will actually get smaller over time. And we know that this lip, when we say keep a stiff upper lip, that's like be stoic, hide your emotions. That's why the number one plastic surgery right now is lip enhancement for women, right? Because they want to be seen as more approachable.
Right.
And people
like when I'm on the podcast, right, you'll see me press my lips together because I'm trying hard to let my guests talk. Now, I love nothing better than to talk. Right. But I notice I do that after listening to you and Janine. It's like,
exactly.
I got to let you talk. I got to shut up.
Yeah. Well, if you go to a lot of communist countries, Poland, Russia, I've been to Budapest, or not Budapest, Bulgaria, Romania, Poland. You go to a lot of these communist countries, everybody's got flat upper lips because they weren't allowed to talk, right? You talked, you gave public opinion, you end up dead.
Right.
And so that's when people go, oh, what's genetics? Yes, but that was because people kept going.
Environment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well. And I do that because one of my shticks is everywhere I go, I tell dad jokes. I have fun. And so we were at a restaurant Saturday morning, and the server was just down. I said, you doing okay? Oh yeah, it's just, it's early morning. I said, well, can I tell you a couple of dad jokes? Do you like dad jokes? She goes, yeah, I like dad jokes. So I just start, every time she brought us water or whatever, I'd tell her, have you heard this one? And she goes, and she comes at the end, halfway through the meal, and she says, you know what? You've made my day. Can you just show up every morning, get a cup of coffee, and just tell me dad jokes? Right. And then she brought other servers over. Oh, you got to listen to this. Oh, you got to hear that. You got to, because you're adding value to people's lives, and you could see their whole face light up, right? Like I can tell sometimes when I'm telling a dad joke and this person has no interest. Just it's like, look, can you just be serious and let me get on with what I'm doing? And you learn pretty quickly to just drop it. Like I can stop a dad joke halfway through with that person, right, and doesn't miss a beat, right? Or somebody trying to talk to you, and you know how you can tell they're trying to get into the conversation, but you're trying to make your point. Well, you got to learn to just, and then they start talking like you hadn't even said a thing because they hadn't heard anything of it, right? So all of that sort of feeds in, but we've learned over time some of the stuff you're talking about, but actually studying it could help a lot of people, probably would improve marriages too.
This is so I showed a picture of Batman, right? There is no one skill, but this one had the largest impact in my life. I would say this skill, decoding facial features, was number one. Body language was number two. I'm trying to get into statement analysis, what people say. I'm visual versus auditory. Give me somebody's email and I'll dissect it in a heartbeat. Right. But listening to what people say, I'm learning. So my mentor actually gave me a book called Mind Reader. Right. By Daniel Lieberman. So he's the same one that wrote the book, Never Be Lied to Again. This is his new one about studying people's language and what they say. So for example, if I said, oh, I was on Edward's show, that, hey, we're friends. Oh, if I was on that guy's show, or if I use your last name, it's creating distancing language where I'm physically getting away from you. So when you start studying people's language, people will tell you how to talk to them also. So even if you don't get a chance to analyze their facial features, if you're talking to me on the phone and I hang up, I'll say, okay, I'll see you later. I'm visual. So people will tell you how to talk to them. We just have to learn to listen and not always project. And guilty, I'm one of the worst people at times about, I know what I want to say. I've gotten to a point of when I study their facial features, I'm giving them my undivided attention. And therefore, I'll then pause afterwards instead of thinking what I want already to then just jump in. And that took me a long time. Before, my mind races fairly fast. And so I'd want to jump in to help people, but I learned that people think that's being rude.
Right.
So I had to learn, how do I taper it down a little bit?
Yeah. So like one of the problems I have when I do these video podcasts, because I don't have a producer on site, I'm doing it all myself. I'm checking time. I'm checking the quote, the statements that you put in your stuff. I'm making sure that my next appointment, that we're not going to run over. And so I'm like, dude, I wish I could just wear sunglasses so I can look around the screens and know different things, because it's not that I'm not paying attention, but I need to, like right now, I'm looking at the time up here and making sure that I'm keeping us on track. And so exactly to your point of what you're saying, it's like when you're talking to people and they're always looking at their watch, right? Or they're looking at their phone and they look up and they nod and then they look back at their phone and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to shut up and just stand here until they're done. And then we can have a conversation. And a lot of times they don't even notice. Like they don't even notice.
But they notice if you weren't paying attention, right? Like people know if you go, and as a matter of fact, so Steve Sims, one of my coaches, gave me a smartwatch. I turned off all the notifications except for health and sleep,
Right, because all the time, like you're getting texts. It's like the Dick Tracy phone, right? I want one, but I'm not going to buy one because I know every time I got a notification, an email, a text, or whatever, I do a quick glance at it. Now I do find that because I don't wear a regular watch, I'm picking up my phone to look at the time. So I've got to the point where I say, hey, Brian, do you have the time?
Yep.
I just want to make sure that I give you enough time for us to talk. If they sort of, tilt their head and like a quizzical, like, are you done with me or something? I'm like, I left my phone over there or, whatever, because I want them to understand. The same as when I look off screen or I'm looking down here. I've got a friend in New York and he goes, can you get off your phone? I said, well, actually, you just reminded me. He said, well, tell me what you're doing so I don't think you're ignoring. So now I say, oh, yeah, hey, let me send you a referral while I think about that. Let me send you his information, right? So that's why I said, I'm writing notes, like I'm making notes when I look down like this. So one of the things that I wonder is with the hat, do I create a position where people can't relate to me or they can't see certain things? Does it set up a negative or a positive connotation when I'm interacting with people? Or
if you didn't have it as part of your graphic, so for example, your background shows you in the hat, it's part of your brand. Right. If your visual in the corner was you with just your hair combed, then it'd be inconsistent and people would feel incongruent when talking to you.
Right.
So you're good with it because it's part of your brand, right? Like for me, I'm either in a black V-neck or I'm in a vest. That's how I always present.
I do the American flag shirt. So yeah,
exactly. To your point, I think a lot of people are missing out because there's some people who record their podcasts like this because they've got a monitor here and the camera's looking this way.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm over here, when they're doing it. And that's just one of the things that people don't pick up on.
Well, the laptop looking up your nose too is another one that bugs me. I'm like, have you got a stack of books? You got a box? Can we put the laptop where it looks down on you and you can just hold the,
Do you know who Rene Rodriguez is?
No.
All right. So he's another one. And he's the event I told you I went to on Thursday before I left. Yep. He's got a good book called Amplify Your Influence.
I need the Cliff version of all of these because I don't have time to work. I just want to read books. Amplify Your Influence.
Amplify Your Influence. What is his website? I was just on it. He changed it. So I think it's Meet Irene. Renee. See Renee Speak.
SEE?
Yeah. SEERENESPEAK.com.
SeeReneeSpeak.com.
Yep. Sorry, he changed it. Okay, so it's Meet Renee is his new website. So I'll put it in the chat here for you too.
Great.
I was at his event was Thursday morning before I flew to Nashville to meet you guys. And the very first time I met Renee, Bradley brought him on and he spent 45 minutes talking about what is your setup when you're in Zoom, right? What are the things you see? So people ask all the time, is this fake? So no, it's, it's a real background.
Right.
But it's one I created because I used to have just white walls and I didn't like it.
Right.
So I moved one of my bookshelves over, right? So I can talk about books because I'm a huge book nerd.
Right.
But it's also just creating that atmosphere and keeping people engaged. If you have just a white wall, then people go, it's not there. So people need to, especially, post COVID, Zoom is so much more important because how do you put your personality into your background? Like, you've got it great here. It's got your show. It talks about, hey, when is your episode? So, oh, hey, it's right here on Tuesdays. Your background communicates a lot.
Right. And I love messing with backgrounds, right? So my daughter made me this one up, serial entrepreneur, so I love doing different things. For me, like the wife, the most wonderful wife in the world. And then sometimes I'm like, just in case you're not sure of my qualifications, right. I lean into the Australian by birth, American by choice. And sometimes if we've been around long enough,
yep.
I have to. So I have a lot of fun with it, and sometimes I'll make them up for my friends and stuff. Like I had a friend on a networking call. She says, sales is my jam, and so I made up a little screen to put on.
So leave Amy there for a second. Okay. So if you look, like, we don't know Amy that much, right, but see how she has rounded eyebrows? They're very easy to see. Yep. So rounded eyebrow people, think about the people around them first. Okay. So even though she's talking about sales, she wants to help people. And so when we see rounded eyebrows, they think about the people around them. And people say all the time, oh, it can't be that way. I have my eyebrows done. Yeah, but they just enhance what's already there. Now, young girls who don't feel in control of their own life, when they shave off their eyebrow, will draw back an angled one because those are seen as authoritarian, and people with angled eyebrows want to know, what's my angle? Help involve me in the process.
So that's what I was going to ask. If we see them, they draw on their eyebrows. My friend looked at his girlfriend one time and told her that she had drawn on her eyebrows too high. She was surprised. That's my dad joke. So,
it'll take people a minute to get it, but yes, I get that one. It took me a second when you're saying the physiology because I wasn't thinking FIZZ, but yes.
Right. Yeah. So sometimes they work better written, right? Like one of the ones that I like but doesn't work is no matter how kind you are, German children will always be kinder.
Yeah.
Kinder. Right.
Right.
So kindergarten, where kindergarten comes from. But so some jokes don't work well in a verbal form. They work better in a written form. Like blind dates, a date with a picture of glasses and a white cane, right?
Right.
On a blind date, or I like blind dates, and that sort of stuff. So some of them work better and some don't. It's just sort of like what you're saying with the way you read. But that was my question, is if you don't have eyebrows and you see them do permanent eye makeup tattoos or they draw in their eyebrows, that still is usable based on the knowledge that you teach.
Absolutely. So with women, and this isn't to stereotype, it's just they've had better tools. Right. Women have been highlighting their facial features for a very long time, right? They can make their cheeks look wider or thinner with rouge or whatever it is here.
Yep.
Women who don't have fuller lips have still drawn lipstick higher than their lips. I see it all the time, especially older ladies that don't have plastic surgery done. They were raised that if they wanted to draw bigger lips, like we always see, the big red lips that kiss something, right? They're always full lips. They're never small, thin lips. And so women would draw in lips that they don't have, and you get up closer,
like a line outside of the lip, make bigger lips. Yeah.
Right. Or I love giving this example. People are like, oh, no. Take a kid, you get their face painted. What do? They act out that character for the rest of the day when their face is painted that way. Women do that with makeup. So if they want to make their upper eyelids be more abundant, they put a bright color here so that you're drawn to it and see, oh, look at my fuller eyelids. And that is I like Dr. Seuss rhymes. So the more lid you see, the more we think in terms of we. When you see somebody with very full upper eyelids, they're a we person. They like to do things with other people versus alone. So when you see that on someone, invite them to go somewhere or start using we language, inclusive language. Well, once we get started on this and when we get going, that's how you speak their language. So I don't have a lot of upper eyelid. I'm fine doing things by myself. So last night it was Halloween, right? And I had my daughter this weekend, so we didn't go out and I didn't get to see a lot of costumes. So I went out last night there was a big Rangers game here, we're in the World Series. So I went to watch a game, but I went out in costume because I want to see some other people in costume, right? And I went by myself to one of the spots. I went somewhere and I said hi to someone. And I went to one where I'm like, I want to see more costumes. I'm fine doing things by myself. Part of that's because I used to travel by myself.
Right.
So I'd always eat by myself. But even then, I've gone to movies by myself, you name it. And so if somebody goes with me, it's a bonus, but it's not a requirement.
Right. My wife and I are like that. We used to peel off and go to movies separately.
Right.
And like if she wanted to see a certain type of movie the Notebook, the English Patient, the Piano, all Schindler's List, that stuff, I go to be entertained. I want to see Fast and the Furious. The trouble is she wants to see Fast and the Furious too. So I have to make sure it's films that she doesn't want to see, and we peel off. And people go, you go to the films by yourself? Yeah. And then we meet at a Denny's or an IHOP or a Perkins, and we talk about the movies that we saw. People go, that's just weird.
The funniest thing, why are people afraid to go to a movie by yourself? Because you don't talk during the movie unless you're annoying.
Right.
Right. Movies should be the first thing you go to by yourself. Because what do? You get some popcorn and you sit and you eat and you watch.
Right.
If you're talking during a movie, you're going to annoy me or we're going to get kicked out.
Yeah, exactly. I think the only point is after the movie you want to discuss it, but you can do that with people walking out of the film. Could you believe that? Could you believe that? That was a great twist. I like that sort of stuff. Okay. So if let's talk a little bit about I have a lot of business owners on here. So this is quality stuff. They can get to your website. Right. They can have you got a series of videos that you've done or anything on YouTube?
Yeah, so a combination. First off, you can find me everywhere at Subtle Skills, SUBTLESKILLS. I've learned that people can't spell subtle. And so I also have decodetheface.com will get you my website.
Okay.
But on Instagram, TikTok, I put up videos almost daily. Now, some of them recently, I've been on a run of speaking gigs. So that's why I've been putting a lot more of up. But what I'll do is on some days, I'll just grab a flashcard and we'll go over what does feature mean. And then I'll bring up pictures of people that meet that. So it's a way to learn there. Flashcards are what changed my life. Books are good, but flashcards are better because you can take them with you. My goal is these are my mentor's flashcards. It's my way to pay homage for him teaching me the skill. When they're done, I'm moving to a digital format so that people can have it on their phones on the go, from there.
It'd be probably less expensive to get access to as well.
Absolutely. You can pay a low monthly fee instead of buying the flashcards for $97. And it's 3 sets of flashcards. So then it's like, which ones do you carry with you? Versus if you have it on your phone, you can type and search. So that's what I'm working on as an app on the side. I have group training, individual training. I've got video courses on it. Probably the most popular one is what's called how to sell more with who's behind the door, because it was taught to door-to-door salespeople. That's the event I'm speaking at in January, is door-to-door con.
Oh, wow.
So these people have 7 seconds to figure out how do I speak someone's language, because they're selling a commodity. They're either roofers, solar. So they're not the only ones in a niche industry, but how do I get you to buy from me instead of from, Tom, Steve, and Harry?
Right.
And then I do speaking gigs and I do half day or full day trainings. Those are the more fun ones, because when you get to see people see it, like in the 30 minutes that we had at Impact Effect 23, it was enough to show people what's there. And then for anybody listening, it's very simple. Go to getthecheatsheet.com and you can go and and that'll teach you eyebrow height, eyebrow shape, and a few other features. And so it's a little cheat sheet that you can practice with. Then once you find out that it works and you want to reach back out and learn more, go for it. But that's just something you can practice with, work on it. But the trainings are more fun because we'll do an hour of training and then we'll do 15 minutes of analyzing people in the group. And then we'll do another hour training, then we'll bring people up. And we start talking about, for your industry, how does it help?
Right.
Main industries that use this, because again, it's commodity, real estate, automotive, door-to-door. Because why? They have one shot with people and they make good commission when they sell those things.
Right.
You mentioned romance earlier. You can enhance existing relationships by learning what this is, because you think, okay, here's what we have in common. Here's what's different. How do we meet in the middle? So during COVID, I created a course called Looking for Love in All the Wrong Faces.com, because I was so tired of all my friends sending me pictures of who they were dating and saying, like, should I date this person? Yes or no. And I just created a cheap $200 course for people to go do it themselves. And the tagline is it's cheaper than 2 bad dates. But that's actually how Janine and I became friends. And she'll tell you this. She was going through a dating period, and everybody she'd date, she'd send me a picture, and I would take their picture and I would send it back with arrows and be like, this means this means this. And she would decide, does she want to go on dates? And now she would tell them all, I'm going to send a picture to my friend Brian, and he does facial analysis. So just so you know, and they would all read it and go, yeah, that's me to a T. So this was not even being in front of people. This is me getting pictures of people. And so what that turned into with corporations is, if you have a high stakes negotiation,
Right.
let's get on the phone, let's look at some pictures, and let's talk about how you can change things. On my Instagram page, there's a testimonial by a guy named Atiba, who we got on to do a podcast just like this. And he shared after the podcast that he had a big deal he was going to meet with. And I'm like, all right, you got a picture of him? And sure enough, he brought it up, and I told him exactly what to do and change about his pitch. He won that deal, and the guy never even asked about price. He's like, all right, how do we move forward?
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say is, a lot of the times, a lot of my listeners are the solo entrepreneur or 1 to 10 employees, and everything comes down to price, right? Until they can move beyond that, they're always going to be stuck. But think about it. The flashcards. Is it $97 for each set?
No, you get the set includes 3 different decks,
right,
that you can take with you.
Okay, so three decks of cards for $97. Right. For most of us, we go, oh, $97 for a pack of playing cards. I can go to Dollar Tree and buy a pack of playing cards for $1 or $1.25 these days. I tell people, if you love going to Dollar Tree, is that idolatry?
Yeah.
You know, or is it $1.25 tree now? Anyway, but the point is, for $97, it's well worth dropping that. And even if they only pick up 1 or 2 things that can help them negotiate and makes one difference, like my average sale is only $500, right? So for my barter exchange, to bring somebody into the barter network, they pay $500 for a lifetime membership, right? And so it's not a great deal of money. The money comes if I can make the money, right?
Yes.
But $97, you know, I'm looking at that going, when I first heard it, I'm like, $97 like for some cards? And then I came over and talked to you, and I'm like, yeah, I got to get these. So, but you just have to think it through, right? And the courses, for somebody to do personal coaching with you or group coaching, or to do one of your courses online, that's a skill that's going to stick with them if they study it and if they work it. It's a skill that's going to stick with them for the rest of their life.
It's a business skill that bleeds over to your personal life. And so you and I were talking before this. I hate the cliche of 10xing, right? But when I first started my job 20 years ago, now granted, you could say, oh, 3% raise over a certain period of time. No, I got 11 different promotions over time. And it all started when I started learning this skill. And I was able to 10x my income. Now, it wasn't in a year, right? But learning these skills taught me how to deal with customers, how to deal with coworkers, and how to deal with leadership.
Right.
To the point, I just kept getting promoted. So I reached the Peter principle, if you know what that is. That is, you're promoted to your level of incompetence. I hated the job I was promoted to. And I love doing this. Like the idea of getting in, teaching people a skill that changed my life and can change theirs too. It's just one of those days I wake up. I used to dread, like Pavlovian's dog. Like as soon as my phone rang, I was like, oh, what's wrong now? Now my phone's like, ooh, what do we get to do? Like you and I met, we booked this the same day we met, right? Because I found you interesting. I'm like, I want to do this. So while we're at the conference on one of the breaks, I locked this down.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll tell you this. Originally, I wasn't going to do any podcast today because I'm going to be on Sharon Lecter's podcast in 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I'll save my voice and everything. But you were such a fascinating guy. I'm like, let's do it. And let's do it now. Right. While it's hot. So we can have these conversations instead of, oh, in 2.5 months, we'll jump on it.
Yeah. And that's the way I am. It's like, it's the energy. I feed on energy. And sometimes knowing the skills that you're teaching is helpful, because if people aren't in my tribe, if they don't get me, I don't want to make them go through having to get to know me to know that I'm not their guy, right? I want them to know pretty readily. And you pretty much either love me or hate me. There's no really in between, you know. Oh man, he's always over the top. Oh, everything's a joke to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Like, unless it needs not to be, right? If it needs to be serious, it can be serious. But if there's a pun or a play on words that can come in. But I love sharing people's stories. I am a storyteller. I am a story reader. I love books. I love movies. I love hearing those stories. And I think we've lost the art of listening to other people's stories. We just want to talk about what we do. So I'm really glad that you came on. Thank you so much. Any last, I've got one question for you that I ask a lot of people. What is something that you wish people would ask you when you're being interviewed or when they're asking you questions about what you do? Is there anything that you go, man, I really wish they'd ask me this question?
Sure. Was I born with a skill? And the answer is no, because that's the challenge is when we see somebody who's proficient in something, we assume it's a natural ability. And it's the farthest thing from a natural ability. What it was is time. One, I didn't plan it. I ran across my mentor. Number two, it was the willingness to try it. And number three, it was the willingness to keep pushing forward with it. And so anybody can learn this skill. And that's the number one takeaway is I'm not special. I just took advantage of something that was introduced to me. Right. And anybody can learn this skill. So thank you for that question, because that is often people just look at it and go, oh, he's born with it. Oh, no, Janine in body language, she had to learn it. Me in facial decoding. Yeah.
I learned back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was doing a multi-level marketing, Amway, and they had a speaker come in. He was brilliant. And he talked about think about everything that you would want in an employee or a leader. And he says, okay, let's put them on the board. Dependable, reliable, honest, trustworthy, friendly, all of these things, right? He puts them all. And he says, is this a skill? Or is this innate? Is this what they're born with? Can you learn this? And that's what it turned out, right? You could learn virtually everything, to have empathy, to have compassion, to be trustworthy. You can learn it all.
Oh, 100%.
And so they're learned behaviors. And that's what I think I hear you saying is that you can learn to do this. None of us knew how to walk when we were born.
Exactly.
We didn't get up and run the 4-minute mile. We had to fall down a lot.
There's a challenge with, and I suffered from this too. We have imposter syndrome when we're trying to learn a new skill and we're afraid to tell anybody we're learning it. But one of the best quotes I ever heard, and Steve is who mentioned it, but I forget his friend who phrased or coined the term. And they said, only imposters don't have imposter syndrome. And that was the one that stuck with me.
I actually, that's really good.
Yeah.
So what I tell people all the time, so one of my challenges is I love the aspect of customer service. Selling is fine. I do not like asking for the money. Now, is that something intrinsically a problem with me that I'm not as confident as I need to be? Yeah, we could dig into that all day if you were in that realm. But when it comes down to it, the best thing I heard from a coach was, well, just tell them that. Hey, Brian, you notice I'm getting a little nervous because what happens when I get to the point where it seems like we're on the same page and that we're ready to move forward and I have to ask for the check, I get like all nervous and stuff, and I'm not very good at that. So it's not that I'm being shifty or I won't make eye contact. It's just like my heart starts beating faster because I'm going to ask you for the money. So could we do this? When we get to that point, would you give me the grace to understand that that's all it is I'm not very good at that? And I don't want you to buy something that you're not into, but if it's something that you decide that we want to move forward with, I just wanted to let you know that because I'm not very good at that part of it. It doesn't have to be that long. It can be a lot shorter, but they really appreciate that.
So, when you join a podcast and you kind of wonder what you're going to get out of it, that's what I just got out of it, because I suffer from that same disease. I'm so passionate about it and I want to help people. And then when it comes time to ask, I'm like, well, okay, here you go. Like now, I need
my speaker fee, but I can give you a 50% discount if we can do
right, exactly. It's that there's a good, if you know who Bradley is, Brad did a one time I was on his masterclass on Tuesdays called Closer School. And he's like, stop worrying about business you already don't have. If you get it, it's a bonus, but stop looking at it, it's going to be a loss. And that's what I do is somebody go, well, what's your speaker fee? And I go, well, what's your budget? And then you play this little dancing game back and forth. And now I don't do that. I'm like, well, this is my range. How many, is it half a day? Do you want me to stick around the entire event? Can there be VIP events? Can I help you market it? Once you learn to add value to what you have, but it's weird. going in as a speaker, I'm not as nervous as selling one-to-one, even though I know this skill will change lives.
Right.
But I just don't want to be perceived as that's what it's about, is the money. I want this to be about people's lives. Like I mentioned before, I've got a daughter. I love this device. It connects us to the world, but disconnects us from each other.
Right.
And it's going to be harder for my daughter's generation.
Right.
Because they grew up with phones where they can have the perfect picture, the perfect text message, the perfect email. You heard me laugh about it. I grew up at the day and age with no caller ID on the phone. We just took a wild chance and answered the phone. Kids don't get that. And when I go places, we went to dinner with some friends that were neighbors one time, and we walked into a restaurant. We thought, okay, the kids will play together and we'll have adult conversation. They walked in, slapped in 2 tablets and stuck their headphones on them the minute we walked in. And we didn't bring our daughter's tablets. We're like, okay. But that's how a lot of people are raising their kids. Now, don't get me wrong. My daughter has a tablet. She watches TV. But our rule is you have to converse first. You have to eat your food. And then if you finish before us, not race to it, but if you finish before us and our food's taking longer or we're having adult conversation, then you'll get a tablet or a phone. But it's not the go-to. And sadly enough, that's what more people need. So if we can teach this to more adults who can teach this to their kids, that's where the impact is going to happen.
Right. And I think you're exactly right. So our kids, mine are 25, 28, and 30, right? Our 3 kids. And for them, they were just starting to go through the mode of cell phones, as teenagers, 12, 13, 14, 15. And so for us, it wasn't as bad. And we never did tablets. I remember a YouTube video where this 1-year-old's trying to do this on a magazine, a printed magazine. She's trying to flip the page, and she's actually got to turn the page. But she was 1 and she knew how to use a tablet. So I think sometimes that it takes us away. So I like to go into schools and I like to go into groups and teach those interpersonal skills. Right?
Yes.
Hey, make eye contact. But one of the things that's frustrating me right now with marketing companies, and let me know if your time is up.
No, I enjoy this. I'm good.
Okay. So my next appointment is, I moved him half an hour and he's honoring that. So that's pretty good. So when you look at billboards and you look at signage, they've taken eyeballs out of it. New graphic designers and new marketers, they're not putting people on as many ads anymore. So I got a banner stand for my barter business. I own a franchise. And it's got the cell phone on it, and it's got a picture of the barter card called Trade Bank, and there's no eyeballs on there. Well, you and I have been raised to make eye contact, right? Look people in the eye, shake hands, that sort of stuff. If you don't have eyeballs in your advertising, if you don't have a headshot on your business card or a picture on what you do on your website, if it's not you and they can't see your eyes, they're not going to connect, right? I mean, I think that would tie back into, even if it's cartoon eyes of Tom and Jerry on a billboard or Mickey Mouse, you connect with those eyeballs. And it's frustrating with me that new marketing and advertising doesn't have that, and I have to teach that. I also have to teach that to kids interviewing. They're not teaching how to network in schools, right? Even in colleges, they're not really teaching.
Which is crazy.
Yes. So how do you, so I created a platform called Networking Education. And I put up YouTube videos whenever something grabs me, like I'm at a networking event and I see something, the old guy that's still handing out his business cards, or the guys that come to me and they say, oh, just tap, it's NFC or NCF, whatever that is, just tap and you can get all my contacts. I'm like, you have a real business card? Oh, no, I only use digital. I said, okay, so it's going to go in my phone contacts. You're saying that the business card just lays on my desk, which I have stacks of business cards all over my desk, but these are people that I actually want to connect with and contact back, right? I have them here that I can look at them. On my phone, how am I going to find you in my phone in 20,000 contacts, right?
That's exactly.
So I turn off NFC or NCA. Which one is it? NFC, NCA? Anyway.
NFC.
Near field communication. And so they go, oh, just tap your phone. I said, well, here you go. I'm old. I don't know how to do that. Like, So they're tapping the phone. And they go, well, it normally works. Like, I said, well, they're different brands. Does that matter? No. So I'm like acting dumb, right? And then I pull out my business card. I say, well, you know what? 100 years ago or so, they figured out a way that on a little piece of cardboard, you could put all your information. Like only if they understand my humor. I wouldn't do that to make to hurt somebody's feelings. But they've got these little things called business cards, and you could just hand me, oh, no, I don't do that anymore. I said, okay, well, let me turn it on, because I just turned it off because I don't like digital cards, because it's going to get lost in my contacts. You know, if there was a way I could set an alarm to have that pop back up in a couple of days, maybe that's an app we need to write, you know, so an app that keeps you top of mind and rotates through all the business cards, that contacts that you have, so you can, hey, you met this guy 3 months ago today. Oh yeah, I need to reach back out.
So there is a one, I think it's called UVO, OOVO, but there's a type of card that what I like about it is when it NFC, it says, hey, here's my information, but they can click a button that says, send Brian my information. Because when everybody does that, they're only doing it one way.
Right.
And so you're right. Just like we talked about it at Impact Effect 23, some people are visual, some people are auditory, some people are kinesthetic. Some people like business cards, like you're talking about. But if I walk up and immediately I go, oh, hi, I'm Brian, this is what I do. No, have a conversation with me first. Then let's see if we want to exchange cards. You know, that's like walking up to some girl, kiss, and then going, you want to go out on a date?
Right. Exactly. I love that analogy. Yeah. How do we? Yes, exactly. So I use a business card that is folded. So it's a double-sized business card. And the reason I love that folded card is for the people that put the stack of business cards right by their computer that they're going to go through. Mine opens up. So it can't be in the bottom. It's got to sit on the top, and then it's got my headshot in it. Just teaching people different little tricks. And did I give you some of my round to it?
Yeah, I was gonna say your little round.
So my round to it. I'm running into 99% of people do not know what a round to it is and have never seen one before in their lives. Right.
That's funny.
And so you can resurrect marketing tools that somebody else used, and you can reinvent. The other thing I like to do is I take this plastic foot I buy off Amazon. It's a clear plastic foot, like it goes in a woman's shoe to go in a shoe shop. And you put it in a box and say, you put a letter in there with a couple of brownies, you stick a Post-it note that says just trying to score some brownie points. But you put, hey, I want to be totally transparent. I'm just trying to get a foot in the door.
Yes.
Would you like to meet me? Not, I would love to meet you, right? Because your communication guy that was there, the guy that was on stage saying, you know, you got to use the right words. Hey,
yeah, Jamie Miller. Yes.
Yeah, would you like to meet me? I think maybe, you know, and I'm saying the wrong words now, but anyway, and it gets a great response, because if I find people in my tribe, they go, dude, I don't know what you do, but yeah, let's have a meeting, because they like the totally transparent, just trying to get a foot in the door, good puns. So I think we can do that with facial expressions. We can tie all that stuff in to just be better human beings, connect with people by understanding them. It's not a sales trick. It's, hey, how can you add value to them? How can you help them better? Exactly.
And as soon as people hear you start off with an I statement, some people just shut down because it sounds like, I want this, I want that. And you're right. So once you learn, I'll give you a simple example. Getting up and speaking, I used to say, notice how I said today what I'm going to teach you, and Janine said, no, when you get up on stage, today what you're going to learn. See, the difference in that is now it's not I'm speaking at the audience, it's what they're going to take away from what's being presented. Little things like that matter, because nobody wants to be force-fed, but people want to feed themselves, right?
So I used to say things like, I want to ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
But I have heard it before said, and so I try and do it. I don't do it as well, but I'm in a B&I group that meets every week, so I get to practice some of the ways that I talk, right? And that question of, what do you need to know from me that would help you?
Right.
What value add do you need from me? Instead of me saying, how can I add value to you? I want to add value to you.
Right.
Well, dude, you know, what would you like to know from me to be able to make a decision? Is one of my favorite ways in sales now. What do you need to, how would you like me to follow up with you?
Right.
Not, hey, I'll follow up with you on Tuesday. How would you like me to follow up with you? And my sales guys go, no, because they could say, talk to me next year, talk to me next week. But that really tells me where they're at. Because then I can come back and say, Brian, I don't know if you're anything like me, But I would take our information, I would put it on my desk, and then I would have the next meeting and I'd put more information on top of the information. And then a week would go by and I'd go, oh man, I got to review that and I got to get back with Brian. And then a month would go by. What if we did this? Wouldn't it be just easier if we could figure out if we said we're between 1 and 10 and you say, well, where would you put yourself on the cycle, right? Where would you?
Right.
So I can help you know what the follow-up should be. Oh, I'm a 7. Okay, well then we've heard. Well, what would it take? What do you need to be at to make a decision, either yes or no?
Right.
Well, I need to be at a 10. Okay, so how do we get you to 10? Well, I need to know this. Just simple things that you can do. Anyway.
I agree with you. There's a really good guy. Let me see if I can find it real fast. He's on Facebook, Instagram. His name is Jeremy Miner. And he teaches, it's called a 7th level communications or whatever, but it's all about how do you phrase things, and asking for help is better than telling, and even putting in purposeful pauses, right? Because the worst thing, and we're all guilty of it, I'm guilty of it, is having commission breath, at times. But when you learn to ask questions the right way, in the right format, involve other people, it just changes how it's done. But yeah, Jeremy Miner.
M-I-N-O-R?
E-R.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love the old Columbo TV show, Peter Falk, where he's walking away. The suspect thinks he's got away scot-free, and he goes, one more thing. Like, your car was parked outside of that venue Friday night. Like, we've got it on CCTV. What were you doing there? And then the suspect starts going into it. And so what I enjoy doing is go, now, Brian, I don't know that this would be a good fit for you, but I've got a networking group of about 50 people. They're looking to refer to somebody like you. Would you know anybody in your industry that could handle another 10 or 20 referrals a month? I know you're very busy.
Yeah.
And you dumb it down, right? Or I used to sell vacuums at Sears, right? Back in the day when I first moved to the States, I actually was in the TV department, but you would have to come and cover other departments. And I would come and cover I don't know anything about vacuums. My line was, people go, oh, what can you tell me about this vacuum? I said, oh, it sucks.
Exactly.
They get to laughing. That builds bonding and rapport, right?
Absolutely.
I say, actually, if you need to know about TVs, I know all about TVs, but I don't know anything about vacuums. Let me grab the manual and see if I can answer your questions. And they really appreciated the fact that I said, I don't know anything about it. I do know that I always buy the maintenance agreement on it, because like these things, they suck up stuff that my kids drop on the floor all the time, and I need new vacuums. So I do like the maintenance agreement. So I had better job selling extended warranties and maintenance agreements on that stuff. But people appreciated the fact that you said, you know what? I don't know. I don't know the answer. Let's learn this together.
That's so when I first got started in sales, gosh, way back in like the early 2000s, the old school technique is no matter what they ask, the answer is yes. But what we found out is if you then couldn't deliver that thing, you blew all rapport. Instead of going, we don't have that today, but we can work on it, or let me find out if we can do it and if it's possible. Because we got ourselves into too many problems. It's going, oh yeah, we can do that. And then the product wasn't delivered. Then you get what's called a cure letter, which is you didn't meet the contract requirements, because the salesperson would always say yes to win the business. Now, is there a time that if you in your heart of hearts know it can be done, but you don't do it today, but you're like, oh, that's a natural leap? Okay. But you'll get more respect from going, let me check on that for you and get back to you, because it's not something we do today, but it might be possible in the future. You'll get more credit for that than saying yes and being found out later, because problems are an opportunity to show people what you're capable of. If a product works great, they don't know what your customer service is like. They don't know what your troubleshooting is like. So there's so many different ways to do it. But the way you asked that last question is straight out of Jeremy Miner's training, which is like somebody goes, well, and you're like, well, I don't know if we can work together yet. Let's discuss a little bit more, because people are expecting you to come in and go, greatest thing ever, you should buy it right now. But when you actually have to sit down and talk to people and go, let me make sure this is the right thing for you, and in your heart of hearts, that it is right for them, then you have an obligation to help them. Versus just some people are about, I'm going to close people no matter what. I don't like pushy people. I went to an event recently that they use some of those pushy tactics, and I don't like it.
Right.
It's I was at one, this is happening at 4 of the last events I went to. Somebody will get done talking from the stage and they'll go, who here would be interested to learn more? And then they raise their hand and they go, okay, now stand up. Okay, now walk to the front. And what are they doing is they're trying to lock people in. And I don't like that. Yeah. If you're interested in what I have, come and find me.
Right.
But I don't want to bring you up, because as soon as you raise your hand and you don't stand up, they're going, well, wait, you had your hand raised. And then it becomes a bully tactic. And I don't like that.
Right.
So
exactly. And that's my favorite way of selling is you know what? Until I know more about you, I don't know whether this will fit you. So 100%. We have to figure out together if this would be a good, and I will make this promise, Brian, if I don't think this is a good fit for you, and understand that I get in trouble all the time because I tell a lot of people, I don't think it's a good fit right now. I would need to research your industry more to see if you would be a good fit for barter. Right. So that's what I tell a lot of people. Like, oh, you do permanent eye makeup tattoos? In Wichita, Kansas, that's probably not going to fly. I wouldn't spend the money to join a barter exchange. However, it is a money-back guarantee. If you felt that you still wanted to move forward, I wouldn't feel that bad because I know I can give you the money back after a certain period of time. But initially, I would say, I don't think so. I don't think this would be a good fit. And they appreciate that, but sometimes they still think it's just sales talk. Right? Are you just techniquing me?
Right. I spoke to martial arts studio owners, which I now know the right language, but I got asked to be a speaker. And I said, hey, can I meet with somebody who is in the Dallas area? Because this was a US wide one. I said, can I meet with one of your studio owners and understand this? Because the last thing I want to do is go up and pitch just my stuff if it doesn't apply to your business.
Right.
But there's people who are just about, hey, I'm going to get paid. I'll be there for my hour. That's all that matters. And some people, they show up, they throw up, and they leave. For me, I'll tell you my little secret why I love being a speaker is because I'm now paid to be in the rooms I used to pay to be in.
Right.
And if you ever notice, I'm over there taking notes and everything else on the other speakers. Like there were 7 other speakers at the event that we went to. And I'm over there watching, like they kicked it off with Tim's story, who was freaking amazing. Right. You just go through and you watch these, and there's always something you can learn from the different speakers. So I love it. Absolutely love it.
Well, hey, Brian, I think this has just evolved into us doing a one-on-one and just having a conversation, which is great. I came on with certain agendas that I wanted to find out about what you do. I love what you do. I think you presented it in such a easy to understand way that it was, I'm a 9th grade dropout. So it's got, and I'm an Aussie, so you got to explain things at a lower level, right?
Backwards, right?
So, yeah. So, I love that. I think that we'll have all your contact details in the show notes, folks. So you'll be able to reach out to Brian, and he's got a lot of stuff going on. I know he's going to produce more books and more stories and more, right? There'll be stuff available. If not, you can send him a direct message on Instagram and maybe get an answer. Who knows,
Or if you're watching this, there's my email right there, brian@subtleskills.com.
Yeah, I don't know if that shows up on the recording, but we'll have your logo and stuff top and bottom on the banners. Okay, do you have a favorite dad joke?
Yeah, so this one's an old one. This was one that I think my grandfather told me, and that is, how do you make a tissue dance?
Don't know.
You put a little boogie in it.
Yeah. Okay. My favorite one right now is Norwegian Navy's putting barcodes on the sides of their warships. So when they come back to port, you can Scandinavian.
Yeah, that's funny.
The other one is a business one. I said, my friend started a business selling yachts in his attic. Sales are going through the roof.
There you go.
So those are my 2 of my favorites that I like to talk about with my TikTok channel. But I go into businesses all the time. They go, no soliciting. I said, I'm just trying to solicit a smile. It's interesting, though. I walk the strip malls and offer them all to be on my podcast. Right. I said, look, the audience is that you can share it out with your networks. I can brag on you. You don't have to brag on yourself. And they're like, oh, I don't know. I don't know that we would want to do your podcast. And I'm like, okay, no worries. Like, I'm not selling you anything. I'm giving you an opportunity for free marketing.
Exactly.
And
third-party referrals. Third-party referrals are always more powerful than you talk. If you talk about yourself, you're a narcissist. But if I go, do you know Edward? Do you know what this guy does? That's credibility. And that's what people don't understand.
Right. And so I'm working with those that want to be worked with. And I love the fact that you've come on, you've given valuable information that if people just learn it and go to your website and check it out, watch your Instagram, follow you on Instagram, that they're going to get valuable skills that's going to help them in all areas of their life. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, Brian. Would you do me a favor? Would you come back in 6 months to a year and do some of this stuff again and add some new stuff to it? And let's have
Absolutely. You want to come back in 3 months, we'll do it again. So
Okay.
yes, I'll absolutely come back.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show. G'day again. Well, that's it for the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like us, subscribe, follow, write a 5-star review, you know, all the good stuff. Thanks a lot for listening and look forward to having you listen to the next one.